Fine. I guess now the slides are visible. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. So let me at the very outset express my highest sense of appreciation, um, particularly for this effort taken by the National Law University Tripura to organize an online FDP titled Literature as a Repository of Indian Knowledge Systems, Decolonizing Narratives and the Quest for Social Justice. This couldn't have come at more opportune time, I believe, particularly because now we are all poised in various departments and universities to interpret this very, I would rather call a very slippery term, IKS, Indian knowledge system. People have been trying to define, redefine, recontextualize Indian knowledge system, and rather ironically and paradoxically, within Indian university systems, it has been found rather difficult to define what is Indian knowledge system. It's rather an easier exercise to define Western epistemologies. But then, nonetheless, I believe that is a welcome change. And when it comes to NLU Tripura, I believe this is an endeavor to consider IKS not just as a vertical, but as a fantastic opportunity to bring up certain interdisciplinary possibilities, considering knowledge system, particularly Indian knowledge system, as the fulcrum of curriculum development and certain pedagogies and so on. I'll reflect on those things a little later. Let me also appreciate the kind of vibe that was created by the Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Yogesh Pratap Singh. His words were very, very encouraging. And also, he, in very, very short but very meaningful and thoughtful sentences, he made it very clear that some of the disciplinary boundaries are going to vanish if we consider IKS more meaningfully and more seriously. And also that our knowledge systems, including the curriculum for law academies, will be beyond some of these philosophical and canonical containers, so that we reach out to other disciplines, because we go in a way by Indian approach to our own reality, interpreting a worldview, considering that Vasudeva Kudumbagam, the whole universe is a family, and so that all knowledge systems are also interconnected. So what I intend to do in about an hour or so is to walk you through my topic, which is titled as Mythical Ecologies in Indian Fiction. And if possible, I'll also make an attempt to decolonize some of the narratives with the help of indigenous environmentalism, because by and large, environmentalism and eco-criticism and ecological studies have been considered as the products of Western brains. But I'm trying to trace some of these things, some of these origins, way before we had the Western impact of the Western knowledge system. So that's what I intend to do. And some of these ideas which we may generate in the process of having a discussion on this topic could also be taken as pointers in drawing, when we get back to our drawing board, and then when we make our curriculum and also design our pedagogy, particularly literature pedagogies for all disciplines, including law universities and so on. So to begin with, I generally have an anecdotal approach to my topic. So this time too, I will not deviate from that. I have two trees being depicted in two photographs, one on the top right and the other one on the bottom left. So I'll talk about the top right tree first. These are two famous trees. I'm of the opinion that, like human beings and probably certain animals, trees too are witnesses to history, and they too have stories. And they have been here, and probably they will continue to be here in the planet way beyond our own longevity. So there are many trees in India which have witnessed a lot of historical events. And these two are very significant trees. They bear some amount of worldview, Indian worldview, and they have also been a part of, I would say, two significant historical moments. So I'll talk about the top right, the one on the top right. It's a huge banyan tree with many aerial roots which develop into branches subsequently. This tree must be more than 100 years old, and it covers an area of more than, I would easily say, 100 meters of circumference, radius probably of 50 meters radius. This tree could be found if you have ever been to Auroville. Auroville is in Pondicherry. So in Auroville and the Aurobindo ashram that you find, one of the most significant meditation centers in India is called a Matri Mandir. That was constructed in commemoration of Aurobindo's spiritual partner called Amma in Tamil and Mother in English. So Mother was one instrumental, largely instrumental in constructing Auroville. Auroville has so many other specialities, including using very little electricity for energy, because it is constructed on a principle called arcology, that is architecture and ecology together, to save the sunlight and use sunlight maximum for the building. So that apart, this tree has a history, very interesting story about this tree. When the construction of Auroville started in 1968, and the builder was a British man, and this construction was supervised by Mother herself, that Aurobindo's spiritual partner. In 1968, the construction started. And one fine morning, Mother comes to this construction site. By that time, they had already decided that this tree will be the locus, that will be the center of Auroville, and all other constructions will be built around that. So that was the plan. And that itself, in a way, indicates how we in Indian spirituality consider banyan tree as so sacred that rather than cutting it away, we try to build things around that. So now what she does is, one fine morning, she comes to the construction site and she calls the contractor and tells him that I think that the tree is not happy. This great banyan tree is not happy because as last night, the tree visited me in a vision, in a dream, and told me that she is not very happy. So obviously the workers as well as the contractor, all of them were confounded. They were confused. They couldn't understand how could tree talk to a lady and how could there be a problem. So she insisted once again, Mother insisted once again. She said that I feel that tree is very, very seriously unhappy and we need to investigate. So she goes very close to the tree and all of them find out that a few nails, iron nails, are driven into the tree. A few nails have been driven into the tree, and there are two reasons for those nails to be there in the tree. Because the tree was already there before this land was taken for Auroville. So before it was acquired or taken up by Aurobindo Trust, this tree was celebrated. This tree was a very important part of a ritual of the local people in Pondicherry there, because around the tree it is all arid land, which later was developed into Auroville. So there was a ritual and a belief system that the hair, hair of a sick person could be tied to a nail, and the nail could be driven into the tree with a belief that the tree has a spirit, and this tree and the spirit inside the tree has the rare ability to cure these diseases. So the local people had this belief, superstition, that some of those nails which were found on the tree were driven into that by these people who wanted to keep away, they wanted to dispel the illness from sick people. So these were some nails. Apart from that, mother also found out some fresh nails being driven into the tree. And these nails were driven by the workers. The workers would bring even their kids to babies at times, women working for Auroville. They would bring babies and they would keep them under the banyan tree, and they would bring their tiffin, their lunch boxes, which invariably used to have those days in the 1960s. They used to have a handle, and those lunch boxes were hung on those nails which were driven on the tree. So mother immediately orders the removal of all the nails from the tree, and which is done immediately. And they also find out that some of these aerial roots and some branches have been now uh, destroyed by the nails, and then they decide that some of these aerial roots and those trunks and branches will be cut away from the tree. What is very interesting here is they decided that they could prune the tree, a bit of the tree, especially the diseased aerial roots. They do that, but they do it with a lot of humanity, or a lot of humanitarian empathy. So instead of some power machinery, they invite a tree surgeon. A tree surgeon is invited, and the tree surgeon performs almost a painless cutting of these roots and branches. Unbelievable to think about this kind of an insight and this kind of an approach to a tree in 1968. And this is what Indian spirituality and its vision can do. Now, coming to another tree that is there on the bottom right hand corner, this tree, there is no tree now there. The tree that you find in the picture was planted much later. But what you find there is a memorial, and there is a memorial with a name called Buda Bargat. This memorial is for a Bargat plant, Bargat tree, that is a banyan tree once again. And banyan tree has significance. I'll come to that just a little later. Now, this Buda Bargat was a very famous tree in Kanpur. Now, there is a park in Kanpur which is called Phool Bagh, which was renamed later. And this park was already in Kanpur way before India's freedom. Now, what happened was this tree, after India's independence, it died, and this small monument was erected there with the name of the tree inscribed in that, Buddha Vargat. It's very rare that you find a memorial for a tree. You might find a memorial for human beings, leaders. You also find memorials for martyrs, but here you find a memorial for a tree. And this tree has a very interesting history. In 1857, during the first revolt, freedom fight revolt, 1857 revolt, the Britishers rounded up many revolutionaries, and 133 revolutionaries were caught, and they were hung on this tree. It was done purposefully. They could have hung these people on any other tree, but they knew that a banyan tree is doubly precious, is doubly significant in Indian context, and they were trying to send a message very, very loud and clear to the rest of the revolutionaries that, like, anyone who raises any voice against the British would be killed and hung on banyan tree. Now, look at the politics of tree coming in here, the belief system that is also coming in. Now, what happened ironically was, from that day onwards, the local people in Kanpur started celebrating the tree. The tree itself was considered as a martyr because 133 people were hung, and because of that, the tree became more famous than the park. And when eventually, after years, and every year there would be a commemoration, there would be a celebration, there will also be rituals commemorating the tree, and the tree was considered, if that was considered as a place to hang by the Britishers, the same tree was considered as a martyr, as a symbol of martyrdom, and as a symbol of resilience, as a symbol of resistance by the people in Kanpur. Now look at the way how the history turns around, and this is what I mean by this is purely indigenous resistance. And a tree has a history. A tree has a story, a more fascinating story probably than any human being can tell. And here we have a tree which had witnessed this event, historical event. And despite being a mute witness to that, later a small, very, very, uh, I would say that very ordinary memorial was erected. But nonetheless, if ever one goes to this park, now what resonates, as Stephen Greenblatt would say, that resonance of this is the place where the tree had stood once, and the tree is missing now. It's no more there, but still that place reverberates with messages of resistance, martyrdom, and so on. Now, this is what I mean by the core of spiritual ecology. Spiritual ecology is not only about religion. Spiritual ecology is also about very subtle resistance against colonial enterprises. Well, I took a rather too much of a time in explaining these two, but I thought that these two anecdotes are very, very significant in understanding how we could build Indian knowledge system. One of the ways that we can do is to have an anecdotal approach to things rather than a kind of scholarly approach, because too many we could have numerous stories making history. You can have numerous witnesses talking about history and so on. So that could be one of the ways we could look at. Now, from there, I take a leap into a very, very interesting section from Atharva Veda, which is called Prithvi Sukta. Prithvi Sukta literally means the hymn for earth. Prithvi, earth, and hymn for earth. It's just the translation. It's a very longer verse, but I have only taken four lines from that. So this is what Atharva Veda and Prithvi Sukta particularly talks about earth. Placing once again earth, sanctifying earth, spiritualizing earth, and also considering earth as an individual and also earth as a mother. Now, this idea that earth is a mother has a very strong rhetoric, because when Indian freedom struggle much later started, if you talk about the 1900 onwards, there was an idea that India being considered as mother, Bharat Mata. Now, why is that? Why does it come up? Why did it come up? It comes from this rhetoric. That's what I'm saying. When you consider your own ground or your own space as your mother, as your nourisher, your commitment to that becomes doubly strong. So this rhetoric, in a way, for me, comes from Prithvi Sukta itself. Once we start sanctifying this planet, once you start sanctifying this earth itself, and to an extent deifying the earth also. So I just read it out. We could read together. This is what Atharva Veda says. Bearer of all things, hoard of treasures rare, sustaining mother, that is a metaphor. Sustaining mother, earth, the golden breasted, who bears a sacred universal fire, whose spouse is Indra. So this is the religious belief. Earth in unison with Indra being the spouse. May she grant us wealth. So all the wealth and all the bounties are to be found from the earth, and there is a need to respect and sanctify that earth. So this landscape that we have in Prithvi Sukta is very wide. It's very unlike the Western idea of your ecosystem, your biosphere. This is the entire universe. This planet. The entire planet is your space, and sanctifying the planet and also speaking for the good health of your own planet, which comes up later. I have not included that, Prithvi Sukta. also talks about the need for fresh air and keeping the earth sanctified and pure also. Um, from there, I move on to two of very significant thinkers when it comes to Indian ecocentric wisdom. One is our own great Mahatma Gandhi, and Gandhiji. Um, before coming to Gandhiji, I need to say also mention that Prithvi Sukta, as I mentioned, in a way is also a kind of cartographic work. And the cartography or map making, according to me, in that is the sacred geography that it sketches. Rather than the real geography, it sketches the sacred geography in 63 verses. And it was written in 1200 BC, that is 1200 years before Christ. And it was not initially written, it was communicated and transferred orally and considered as one of the ancient texts. Later, it was written down. Now, Gandhiji, coming to this, Gandhiji's statement is very, very pertinent here. He says, he talks about, with great concern, he talks about the vanishing forest in India. He says, what we are doing to the forest of the world is but a mirror reflection of what we are doing to ourselves and to one another. His vision of conservation, his vision of humanity or human sympathy includes human sympathy for the forest. Forest is emblematic. Forest could also mean the entire vegetation. Now, what we could take away from Gandhiji's vision here is that he talks about there are hundreds of philosophies that you can draw upon, but what is very close to me at this stage is Gandhiji's idea of a village-based model of development, and his critique of the colonial model of industrial progress. He says, a complete industrialization, mindless industrialization can be social disaster. And he, on the other hand, he believes that we should develop what is called trusteeship. He uses a word, a very interesting word, trusteeship. Now, what is trusteeship? Trusteeship is completely different from ownership. The Western idea of land is that we are mostly the owners of land. But only in Bible, we find a difference, stewardship. So, trusteeship is very close to stewardship. And Gandhiji says that we are all trustees of the land. Now, we need to develop that trusteeship, and all individuals, each individual holds, resources and responsibilities for the entire society and for the future generation. We have the responsibility of passing on something meaningful. With this trusteeship alone, we will be able to do that. Now, this vision of trusteeship is, for me, is an attempt to decolonize the popular idea of development with the help of industrial progress, mindless rather, industrial progress. Similar is the vision of India's great geneticist M.S. Swaminathan, and he is considered to be the father of India's Green Revolution. He talks about a culture that is based on agriculture. He says, if agriculture goes wrong, nothing else will have a chance to go right in the country. He was probably in the 1970s itself, he could recognize that India's future cannot be merely on industry, but then we should also be looking at also agriculture, that too very scientific way of looking at agriculture. So these are two significant foundations that could be used to decolonize the idea of eco-criticism, environmentalism, and so on, because both of them are indigenous, absolutely indigenous. I'll draw your attention to one development that has recently happened in India. There is an association which conducts a specific literature festival called Green Lit Fest. Green Lit Fest happens in Bangalore every year in November. It started in, I guess the first edition happened in 23, I guess. And it is sponsored and supported by WHO, and also the Habitat Trust and so on. Now, this is a very interesting organization which promotes a lot of indigenous green writing, that is Indian green writing, and they publish Indian green writing, not merely fiction, non-fiction as well. This is also an attempt, according to me, to decolonize environmental, you can say environmental activism and environmentalism in general by promoting indigenous writings. So what they try to do is they try to mainstream environmental literature, not just to the academics. It's not confined to academics. It's not about conference. It's quite different from JLF also, Jaipur Literature Festival also. What they try to do is they try to mainstream this among students, businessmen, right, teachers, and also political leaders. So in one of the editions in 2024, there were discussions on topics like, one of the topics was iconic trees in India. It's a study of about 70 trees which have been iconic. Some of them still are there in India. And this endeavor was sponsored, or rather supported, founded by a publisher of the name Benedict Paramanand. Benedict Paramanand is the founder of this Green Lit Fest. And this book that I was talking, this discussion that I was talking about on iconic trees in India is based on a publication, a book, a non-fiction, very, very deeply researched study, which covers 75 trees, iconic trees in India, and they are considered as natural wonders, 75 natural wonders by S. Natesh. S. Natesh has done a wonderful study of that. And he explains in this book the trees that have stood witness to India's very vibrant history, and these trees which have become envoys of its culture. Trees as ambassadors of India's indigenous cultures. Fantastic idea, absolutely brilliant idea. So that is one. And these trees in Natesh's book, these trees include, there is, for example, there is a tree in Kashmir. There is an iconic sequoia tree. Sequoia is normally seen in California, giant trees. And there is one giant sequoia tree in Kashmir, one of the loneliest trees that you can find in Kashmir. So he writes about that. And also, there is a very interesting history about a peepal tree that you can find near Jabalpur, a little off Jabalpur, which belongs to a family called the Kesharwani family. Kesharwani family has a history of nearly 200 years. Fifth or sixth generation people live there. Interesting fact about this tree is, this tree is not outside the house. In fact, the house is built around the tree without cutting the tree. So you can find the branches, jutting out from certain windows and doors of the house, and the house is built around that, and they perform regular puja to this peepal tree, and which has stood more than 150 years. And it tells the story of maybe 3 and 4 generations of this Kesharwani family. Very, very interesting. Anyone who goes there and takes a photograph in front of the tree will wonder that who planted the tree inside the house. But the fact is that nobody planted the tree. The house was built around the tree rather than cutting it. Now, these are all different philosophies. These are all different worldviews. These are all different mindsets, which probably we wouldn't find in Western environmentalism. So this is where spiritual ecology comes into play in a very big way. So that's about the Green Lit Fest. Some of the books which were featured in 23 Green Lit Fest, I'll just talk about one of them and move on. That is the Girl Who Was a Forest. The Girl Who Was a Forest is a biography of a very interesting person, Indian scholar. It was written, this is a kind of a graphic feature, I would say. not a novel, but a graphic book written by Lavanya Karthik. Written by Lavanya Karthik. It's an illustrated story, life story of India's first female botanist. India's first female botanist of the name Janaki Ammal. Janaki Ammal is from Kerala, was from Kerala. She was the first India's female botanist, and she was born in 1897 in the colonial era. Continued to work extensively on indigenous plant culture, herbal medicines, and two very distinct areas of study within botany. One is called phytogeography. Phytogeography is about the distribution of plants in a particular geographical area. And also, she studied extensively on ethnobotany. Ethnobotany is the traditional use of medicinal plants, traditional use of medicinal plants, whether they are for herbal medicines under Ayurveda, particularly about the rainforests in Kerala. So this book is about Janaki Ammal. Janaki Ammal is also known for her knowledge in indigenous herbal medicines. And she specifically studied them from many tribal communities in Kerala, and in particular, she was in very close contact with a tribal group called Irulars. Irular, Malambandarams are all some of the tribals that you find in Western Ghats. She stayed with them, learned immensely from them, and it is from these Irulars she learned a lot of formulations of local medicines. This is amazing. And so this is where remembering Janaki Ammal becomes very important, and rightfully so. Lavanya Karthik writes a book on the girl who was a forest. So this idea comes from her own biography, when Janaki Ammal was told by her father when he told her that I consider you as a seed, and every seed is a potential forest. He had made a statement that every seed is a potential, is a promise of a forest. Fantastic statement from a father, which could not have come at more appropriate time for a girl who wanted to study botany. Now, this I wouldn't comment on other books because for the shortage of time, I don't know how much time I have. The organizers have all the freedom to interrupt me at any point of time. Absolutely. So because I always spill over, there is more than what I can. I always try to bite more than what I can chew, but still I'll try to do justice. I move on. I take you to one of my favorites, a great indigenous scholar, I would say, a post-colonial writer, Amitav Ghosh. Who else? All roads lead to Amitav Ghosh when you talk about Indian spiritual ecology or in Indian ecosystem and so on. There is a fantastic book by Amitav Ghosh. Some of you must have already read, The Great Derangement, which I think is rooted, I would say, in Indian knowledge system, and also one of the bedrocks of post-colonial eco-criticism, I can say, which challenges eco-colonialism and tries to decolonize environmentalism completely. So he is of the opinion that indigenous knowledge and perspectives are crucial, absolutely crucial in understanding and addressing climate crisis. Climate crisis has already hit India. We already know the changing patterns of monsoon and the global warming, the effect of global warming and so on. So he very strongly observes that the destruction of indigenous flora in the context of when the Britishers came to India, they cultivated, of course, they developed agriculture, where they developed agriculture which was beneficial for them. So they developed what? Spices, agriculture of spices, cotton, indigo, which were all useful for them. And these were the raw materials to be siphoned away from India, from the periphery, and the colony becoming the center and creating a kind of economy, exploitative economy later. So he talks about how indigenous flora was destroyed by the Britishers to cultivate nutmeg. So there is also a book, another book, which could be read as a sequel to this, Nutmeg's Curse by Ghosh. It is again non-fiction. If you get time, please do read that. So he talks about what he would call as the politics of vitality. The politics of vitality is the need to recognize the agency of non-human entities. Plants, trees, animals are all the non-human entities, and they do have sentience, and they do have probably emotions. So he talks about that politics of vitality, and which he says is integral in addressing climate crisis and to implement any inclusive climate action. He calls for climate action, he says, but that has to be inclusive. So he also implores the writers to craft what he calls as serious fiction. And what he would term as serious fiction is a shift from a focus on domestic realism and emotional problems to a larger template of looking at environmental vulnerability. So this is in a nutshell what one finds in support of indigenous ecology in Ghosh. Two of these books can be read in tandem, The Great Derangement and also Nutmeg's Curse, two of them. Ancient green initiatives in India. I suppose my slides are rolling. Do they? I'm just checking. Are the slides moving?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank
sir.
you. Thank
We
you.
are now in Ancient Green Initiative.
Yeah, right.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much. These are all certain tipping moments in online sessions. You tend to become very tentative. So sorry. So I also evoke one of my professors, Dr. Murli Shivaramakrishnan. He's again a renowned scholar in Indian eco-criticism. He tried again, like many others, to decolonize environmentalism and ecological criticism. A retired head of the Department of Pondicherry Central University. Dr. Murali worked on two books. There are two interesting books by Dr. Murali. One is um, Ecological Criticism of Our Time, Ecological Criticism of Our Times, published in 2011. Then Images, Words, Reflections, Nature and Human Nature, which is a prequel, which was written before this. So what he talks about is condensed in this, what I have quoted. As literature engages with life and everything in the world, it must also engage with the environment. This is the paradigm shift that he talks about, that any form of literature should have somewhere rooted, has to be rooted in environmental concern. So he talks about the dovetailing of Indian religious thought with environmentalism in his book, and the attribution of sacredness to all life forms can be the foundational aspect of Indian environmentalism. I repeat that. The attribution of sacredness to all life forms, rather than reducing them to matter, can be more integral in a very healthy environmentalism. Other than that, Indian green mythological literature has a leitmotif, I would say. Lots of novels and maybe poems, and even some of the sacred texts that we have, has this idea of Shakti, the female principle, Shakti. Shakti is also known as Prakriti. Prakriti can also be translated as nature. So this runs as a leitmotif in Indian religious imagination, starting from our great epics, Ramayana and Mahabharata, and so on. It's a very intriguing concept. Shakti, or more precisely, Prakriti. Prakriti can be understood as more tangible natural elements. And what are those tangible natural elements? We call them as Pancha Tattva, Panchabhut, five of them: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Five of them, which correspond to five Devis, goddesses: Saraswati, Lakshmi, Parvati, Gayatri, and Radha. These five elements corresponding to that. Now, by deifying the elements, we are also, as as Dr. Murali says, we are finding an attribution. We are creating an attribution of sacredness to these forms. And another idea that comes throughout while reading, it struck me long back, 10 years back, while I was reading Tagore, this concept of Aranya Sanskriti, which can be literally translated as the culture of the forest or forest culture. And to begin with, Upanishads were composed. Upanishads are the essence of India's spiritual and philosophical wisdom. They are composed, interestingly, in forest, and they are built up in sections which are called Aranyakas. And these sections are also called Aranyakas, interestingly, cementing the relationship between forest and spirituality, and forest and worldview, a particular indigenous worldview. Aranya Sanskriti runs through Vedic and post-Vedic texts. In all of them, forests are considered as centers of spiritual development. You find in the case of many rishis and munis, Vasishtha, or any of them, you take any of the munis and rishis in India, all of them retreat into forest for meditation, and forest becomes the center for spiritual development. And forest is not singular in Indian context. Now, if you look at Indian context, there are many types of forests. Forests, for example, we could consider Tapovan. Tapovan as a forest. Tapovan is not a thick forest. It's not a dangerous forest with wild animals. It is just the outskirts, you can say that. Tapovan is the forest hermitage. Earlier days, ashrams and learning centers were built around Tapovan, and these hermitages were built. Tagore drew heavily from this. If at all you go to Shantiniketan once, you will understand what he was trying to do in his university in Shantiniketan was to recreate a Tapovan, a kind of hermitage. And what he did was he started planting saplings. He continued doing that. Vriksha Mahotsav was one of the festivals that he used to have in every monsoon. And this was built upon the idea, his idea of Tapovan was built upon the idea of interconnectedness of all lives and the vision for an education system that integrates itself with nature. Now, this is where the pedagogy comes. Tagore had a vision of a pedagogy where education has to be integrated with nature. So the classrooms could be conducted under the banyan tree. He could do that, right? So that is an integration with nature. So this is then Shantiniketan eventually becomes a sacred ecology for learning. Not just a center of learning, but it becomes sacred ecology for learning. So that's where Aranya Sanskriti comes into play. And as I mentioned, Upanishads are built upon Aranyakas that guide in general all individuals to withdraw into forest. Upanishads guides people to withdraw into forest for deeper meanings. So there is an idea of there is a deeper meaning which can be found out as a result of a quest, meditation, and the spiritual quest very often ends in forest. And even there are many novels which are written in that way. Even if you read a humorous novel like R.K. Narayan's Bachelor of Arts, we find the central character Chandran also has a kind of retreat into the forest and he comes back completely transformed. Though in a comical way, you still find this idea of Aranya Sanskriti running as a leitmotif in Indian fiction. There are also a few significant deities and belief systems which we could revisit to understand indigenous eco-mythical beliefs that we all carry. Probably we just need to list them down. There is a goddess of the name Bu, lesser known probably, but also known as Bhumi. Bhumi or Bhu is a consort of Vishnu when Vishnu takes the avatar of Varaha. In Varaha avatar, Vishnu's consort is called Bhu or Bhumi. So this is again sanctifying earth as a goddess. And there are also, if you go through, for example, Ramayana, let's look at the Valmiki's origin. Valmiki is identified as a hunter and somebody who starts his life probably in the outskirts of forest. So look at the connection between forest and Valmiki and Ramayana. And also one of the sections of that is Aranyakanda, a section which is where we find in these scriptures, you find the gods spending time, rather anonymous life in forest as a kind of their learning process. Another thing that you find particularly in Indian fiction as well as Indian scriptures is this idea of phytomorphism. Phytomorphism is the opposite of anthropomorphism. Anthropomorphism is when the tree starts speaking. But phytomorphism is the other way around, where human beings and gods and goddesses become trees. They change into trees. And this in a way shows that there is no difference, there is no gradation, there is no hierarchy between human beings and plants. Plants are equal to human beings. There is a goddess, popular goddess, a very, very indigenous, of course, very local in a way, of the name Shakambari, Shaka branch, vegetable. So she is the vegetable goddess. Shakambari is considered to be an incarnation of Durga. And she is considered to be the goddess of vegetables, fruits, and green leaves. She is worshipped and she is also known as Bhanashankari, that is Bhanashankari Devi in Karnataka. There are annual festivals celebrating this goddess, Bhanashankari Devi, and which is quite popular. Now look at this identity of a goddess who becomes branches of tree. This is an adequate example of phytomorphism. Then we also have in Indian mythology and Indian belief system, trees and grove which are associated with many gods and goddesses. So we have many of these trees, and there is a Sanskrit word equivalent to a grove called kunj. Kunj is very poetic as well in Sanskrit, kunj, associated with gods and goddesses. There are many of these goddesses like Vana Devatas. There are many Vana Devatas in Indian system. Each state and probably each district will have one Vana Devata. And there are many Vanaspati Kanyas. And there is also an incarnation of Durga, who is called Vana Durga. Now let's just talk a little bit about these Vana Devatas. There is a Vana Devata of the name Aranyani. Aranyani is one Vana Devata. She is supposed to be the keeper of Kalpa Vriksha. There is a concept of Kalpa Vriksha. Kalpa Vriksha is a tree which is considered to be like Kamadhenu, the holy cow. This is a wish fulfilling tree, Kalpa Vriksha, which can give everything. So that is one. And there is also another goddess called Rupeshwari. Rupeshwari is very popular in Northeast Assam. Again considered to be a Vanadevata. And in Tamil Nadu, there is a goddess called Talavasini. Talavasini is supposed to reside in a palm tree. Again, she is a palm tree goddess in Tamil Nadu with great number of devotees. And another concept which I found equally very engaging and intriguing is this idea of Vanapatriga in India. Vanapatriga is the idea of 9 leaves identified with 9 devis, which become important even during Navratri in some places. Vanapatriga. These are the sylvan forms of Shakti. Many plants being identified with many goddesses. Very, very interesting names. Then so the Vanapatrika is also called Navapatrika, or is also called Kola or Bao in West Bengal. There are 9 plants which are associated with 9 goddesses. The plantain, that is banana plant, is associated with Brahmani. That's Colocasia arvi, they called Colocasia, is associated with Kalika. Turmeric plant is associated with Durga. Jayanti plant is associated with Kartiki. B.A.LL plant is associated with Shiv. Ashoka is associated with Shokarahita, goddess Shokarahita. Arun is associated with Chamundi. Paddy obviously is associated with Lakshmi. Look at once again the plants being sanctified and deified with phytomorphism. Another goddess, very, very indigenous again, not across entire India. You find her worshipped and celebrated in Odisha and some parts of Northeast. Her name is Mangala. Goddess Mangala is considered to be the guardian of forest in Odisha and other places. She is again considered to be a form of avatar of Durga. And it is said that she had provided the wood, the timber for making the idols of Puri Jagannath Mandir. If ever you go to Puri, anyway, I'm not hard selling religion, but I'm looking at some of the things which I did not know before I thought about this topic. So I'm just sharing my excitement for all of that. So in Puri, this is the only temple where you have, majorly, I can say, a temple where you have the idols are made of wooden carvings, wooden idols. Every 12 years, they change that. There is a Mahapuja after 12 years. And it is said that it was Mangala at the time of making the temple, Puri temple, she provided the neem tree for making these idols. So the idol of Jagannath, Balabhadra and Subhadra are carved out on wooden, they have wooden faces. So this is one goddess who specializes in what is called Daru Brahma. Daru Brahma is a carving, that is making idol making in trees. So you find this idea of Mangala extremely fascinating for me. Lots of connections with temples and beliefs and the sacred ecology that we talk about. Now I come to finally my theory. What is mythical ecology? Now, what I propose to do, I don't know whether it has been explored. I must give a disclaimer. Please do not work on this because I am already working into this project along with my student called Dr. Suvarna Suryavanshi. We both are working into this topic, so we will be eventually doing either a book or a work on that. So some copyright is already there on this. So mythical ecology is an interdisciplinary endeavor, as our great Honorable Vice Chancellor said. That is an interdisciplinary approach that explores the intersection of mythology and ecological thought. it is developed with an idea that mythology can be strengthened with ecology and ecology can be vitalized with mythology. Probably because a bit of belief can also be good for ecology. And it examines thoroughly, as a discipline, it examines thoroughly how various myths, folklores, and other literary forms reflect, shape, and influence our understanding and relationship with the natural world. When we sanctify, when you deify certain plants and trees, generally, I think our approach to them will also be different. Then, mythical ecology is also concerned with how ancient stories encode, capture ecological wisdom, and they shape cultural practices and offer insights into sustainable living. So it begins in the past, it gives you a kind of an analytical lens, and it also has some application in the present and also into the future. It can be a model, it can be a vision to conceptualize our own life in future, and more importantly, it can also go deeper into our pedagogies and also curriculum designing when we look at these two not as adversaries. Ecology and mythology are not adversaries, and they can go hand in hand to strengthen both the disciplines. So this is the premise, the basic premise. So what are then the tenets of mythological ecology? For me, the basic tenets of mythological ecology is to explore the ecocentric symbolism. There are many mythological figures symbolizing nature. As I already mentioned about the Panchatattva, I've already mentioned, right? Prithvi, Apas, Agni, Vayu, and Akasha. And we also have many gods and goddesses who are also associated with these elements. For example, Hanuman is remembered as Vayuputra, right? Karna is Suryaputra, and Sita is Bhumiputri, and that's why she also has a name Bhaumi. So this is one part. Then we can see very early warnings against unsustainable practice in the ecological vision that we find in Atharva Veda. As I told you, Atharva Veda emphasizes the need to keep pure air. And this is probably one of the earliest texts in the world where you have the awareness of environmental, which tries to raise the awareness of environmental health. And there is a concept which comes along in Atharva Veda and subsequently in Indian Vedic knowledge. It's the sustainable practice. There is a word in Indian lexicon, I would say, that is Yajna. Yajna is not just a penance. Yajna is a way of living with a balance between consumption and regeneration. Consumption as well as regeneration. And subsequently, as I already mentioned, that there are types of forest that we understand in Aranya Sanskriti and types of forest that we talk about as Aranyas and different kinds of forest. This is relatively a new category, definitely mythical ecology. And then we may talk about, say, for example, Tapovan, as I already mentioned, as a place for learning, hermitage, and Mahavan is a real forest, dense forest. Mahavan is a sanctuary, which is not very often invaded or maybe very often frequented by human beings, which is left as a sanctuary for wildlife and flora. And there is also an idea called Srivan. Srivan is a forest which is associated and considered to be the home of certain deities. I can easily recollect something from my own culture. In Kerala, Shabrimala is where Lord Ayyappa resides, supposed to be residing, which is right in the middle of a forest. But then it is Srivan, but not inaccessible for human beings. So certain months in a year, devotees go for 3 months. The rest of the time, the forest is left untouched. So these are forests which are sacred for gods. Similarly, if you follow Buddhism, I'm not getting into other practices because it becomes too long. Buddhism uh, has, particularly in Arunachal Pradesh, um, we have there is a concept of Bagganj in Arunachal Pradesh, which is again a Srivan, where it is said that Buddha resides, and best of the meditation is possible in this Srivan. So this is another interesting foundation for mythical ecology, any work in mythical ecology. We also have what is called sacred botany in India, where many plants are protected, and many of these trees are planted. Saplings are planted because of the sacredness. For example, Bilva tree is considered very sacred to Lord Shiv, and hence people try to protect that. And it is considered also be the location, the place of richness. And then there is Ashwatha. Ashwatha is considered to be the abode of Hari, that is Hari is Narayan, that is Vishnu. There is a concept, there is a belief that one who plants Datri is a plant which is also used in Ayurveda. It is said that one has performed many sacrifices. And neem tree, when one good neem tree does the function of 1 ton AC. Apart from that, one who plants neem is considered to be well versed in dharma, uh, and also considered to be the abode of sun. So these are a few sacred trees which make what is called India's sacred botany. I'll just quickly come to my one analysis of the novel, otherwise it will be left incomplete. Merelin, you can also always stop after that anytime. I'll just do one application of a novel so that it becomes significant. So what I'll do is I'll quickly analyze, not much of storytelling, I'll quickly analyze the indigenous ecological space or mythical ecology in Amitav Ghosh's famous novel, The Hungry Tide. The setting of the novel, all of you know, it is in the very famous estuary of Sundarbans. Sundarbans is shared by both India and Bangladesh. So the setting of the novel, I will not get into the whole story of Piali coming to India and finally helped by Fakir and all of that. And I'll come to the crux of that. The setting of this novel is Sundarbans, which is a very vast mangrove delta, which is also considered to be the abode of a goddess of the name Ban Bibi. Ban Bibi is Ban Devi, that is Van Devi, could be considered in if you transliterate that from Bengali, it becomes Van Devi, which is this goddess is considered to be very interesting syncretic goddess, considered to be the spirit, the guardian spirit of the forest of this Sundarbans, and also considered to be ruling over a large region of forest. She is also considered to be the goddess of tigers, because tigers are seen in Sundarbans, and the hunter-gatherers, the fishermen, as well as the people who go for gathering honey, always pay a tribute. They do a puja to Bon Bibi, because they want to be saved and they want to be protected from the tiger. So the idol, various idols, which were in popular imagination starting from 18th century. There are many stories. There are hundreds of stories about Bon Bibi. Some of them have been collected and published. They come up in many different ways, and there are many publications also about that. Now, this goddess is respected both by Hindus and Muslims. It is said that Bon Bibi herself was born to a Muslim father and a Hindu mother. That goddess was had this father had come from Mecca, and the mother was from Bangladesh, and that's a kind of myth. And she symbolizes the protection against all dangers of forest. And at one point, we find a description there is an indigenous character in this novel, Fakir, who knows lot about floods, tides, and Sundarbans. So you find in this novel somewhere, you find a description of Bon Bibi's idol. There was a large-eyed female figure in a sari, and beside it, a slightly smaller figure of a man. Crouching between them was a tiger, recognizable because of his painted stripes. So that's about Fakir's description. Probably the novelist, and through Fakir, maybe Amitav Ghosh's description of Bon Bibi's statue, or rather idol, which is very elusive. There is no one single Bon Bibi idol. There are hundreds of them in different cultures in India as well as in Bangladesh. There are many texts and stories about Bon Bibi's stories. Bon Bibi's stories include Bon Bibir's Keramati, Bon Bibir Jahurnama. These are all various stories which have been collected from oral traditions and later published in the late 19th century, I believe. So that's one. And another goddess who appears in The Hungry Tide is, her name is Manasa Devi. Manasa Devi is considered to be the snake goddess. I don't know, it might strike some of you if you have read latest novel of Amitav Ghosh, The Gun Island. In Gun Island, Saudagar, the dealer of weapons, eventually goes to this island which is infested with snake. So that's again that's again off Bengal, and there again you find the reference to Manasa Devi. So you could read The Hungry Tide and the Gun Island parallelly, one after another, sequentially rather, and then find these goddesses or these references to indigenous myths which sanctify certain places, particularly I would say Sundarbans. So Bon Bibi, or this myth, takes the role of the mediator between human beings and the dangerous animals like tigers. And what underlies, what is embedded in this belief system is an inherent respect for all lives, including the wild animals. Rather than considering them as adversaries and then hence they have to be killed, hunted, there is a belief among the natives, both in India and Bangladesh, that there should be a balance in the ecosystem which could be maintained with the help of someone like Bon Bibi or maybe Manasa Devi and so on. So this is one way of maybe looking at the sacred ecology in Indian fiction, or I would say that ecological geography, mythical in mythology, or the mythological ecology in Indian fiction. I don't find a disconnect. I find Hungry Tide very much connected to the mythical beliefs that I was already talking about, and Ghosh making a significant contribution in etching out this space through fiction. There are more illustrations. I'm sure I have overshot my time limit. Did I, or do I have 5 minutes more? What is it?
Yes, you do, sir. Please carry on, sir. No
Oh,
problem.
great. Fantastic. Fantastic. So I'll talk about another relatable novel, which was first written in Marathi and then translated into English, titled Mrityunjaya by Shivaji Savant. Mrityunjaya is about Karna, the mythological figure. And what Shivaji Savant does here is, apart from considering Karna as Kunti's unclaimed son, first son, okay, Suryaputra, Savant considers Karna, this is again mythopoesis, re-rendering of mythology. He considers Karna mostly in his surroundings. Compared to other characters like Kauravas and Pandavas, Karna is rendered in this novel mostly in the lushness of the forest. He trains, as a warrior, he trains in the forest, unlike others. And he is always depicted in the company of various plants, trees, animals, and giving, in the process, he gives a glimpse into the biodiversity of that time, assuming that there was a time, historical time, of this great Mahabharat. He talks about this biodiversity, and Karna is considered and in a way asserted to be a child of nature, because you know the myth. Karna was abandoned in a river, and later, and though he is a son of the god of sun, Suryaputra, he is left out in the nature. So he is maybe metaphorically brought up by nature. And there are also references, plenty of references in this novel, as Karna being interested in that availability of resources, reliance on agriculture, and the complex relationship between human beings and nature. And Karna becomes the a spokesperson for this harmonious life. And then it is also said in the novel that Karna's skill as an archer par excellence is are honed by the natural setting. Had he been in any other setting, maybe he would not have had that concentration and maybe those skills. So it is also said in the novel that his survival depends on his ability to understand and interact with his surroundings. He's the one among all the adversaries of Pandavas to understand the nature and the messages of nature rather quickly. So this gives a very likable, anyway, Karna is a likable character. Other than that, a far more likable version of Karna by placing him in this sacred ecology of Mahabharata. So that's another significant work that I could talk about. Maybe I would also suggest a reading of another book, again in translation. These two are in translation. This is again written in Konkani, one of the rarest books written from Goa by, Pundalik Naik. Achev. Achev is literally translated into upheaval. It was translated later, much later, written in the 1970s, 76, I believe, if I mistake not. 1977, it was written in 1977. It's about the kind of transformation that a small district, a place in district called Ponda in Goa happens. So it is narrated through many voices. And this novel critiques in the 1970s, remember, a good 25 years later, after the publication, after India's freedom, this was written, and it critiques the expansion of the iron ore mining in Goa. And most of them, like at this point, what happens is the farmers sell their land, and the farmers become very poor and exploited workers in mines in this place, small village called Columba. So there is a character, his name is Pandari. Pandari, he trades his agriculture because he doesn't believe that land is sacred. He doesn't believe that, for him, land is only a property, and he doesn't believe in the trusteeship of land. So he trades that land for some money, and the farmland changes into the mining spot. Whereas there are other two interesting characters in this novel of the name Abu, and also there is a master. There is a master and Abu. These two characters are very deeply oriented towards the cultural values of the belief. So what they do is they evoke the local myths which sanctify the land, and they try to stop the villagers from selling their lands to the mining industry. So this mine fever, this mine fever that affects the village uh, ends in the loss of tradition and many rituals. And the novel is rather that way a lamentation of how many of these earth based rituals vanish, and along with how many traditions and values also ebb away from their day to day life, and how they become bankrupt literally and metaphorically. So, this is another novel which is based on this, I would say, mythical ecology, very deeply rooted in mythical ecology. I don't have too much of time, otherwise, I would have spent more time on two more novels in translation. One of them is it's a very beautiful novel written by Kutumbarao, Akineni Kutumbarao in Telugu. Koletuja Jadalu, softly dies a lake. It's been narrated from the perspective of a boy who is now old enough to understand how the lake has been polluted and how it dies, and along with the death of a lake, how certain myths and rituals and worldviews have also died in a place, in a small village. In it's one of the largest, probably India's largest freshwater lake. It's about the death of this lake, and the corresponding loss of the entire mythical ecology as well. So this is what I wanted to hurry it a little bit. I had a couple of novels more to speak about, and thank you so much for such patient listening. I am enlightened in the process of reading, and so I am getting fresh perspectives. So I'm happy about that. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to have an extended discourse. That I hope I have kept time, or did I?
No, sir.
No.
You
Yeah.
perfectly on time,
Yeah.
because I tracked the time. We started maybe 7 minutes late as per the time. It was supposed to be 7, so no problem. We are on
Thank
time.
you. Thank you so much.
Uh, First and foremost, sir, again, I mean, it was deeply insightful, and you have really dived us into the magical world of the ecology, the mythology of in Indian environmentalism, and plus the energy that you have put in from beginning to till now, we didn't feel like so for me, I'll have to go through at least for another round of the recorded lecture. I suppose so much of knowledge altogether.
Please share with
So
me that as well. We can even I would like to go through what I was trying to do. Yeah, thank you. Please do share the recordings if you have that later. Once you
sure,
edit.
surely, sir.
Yeah.
Surely. So what we'll do now, we'll quickly take a few,
Yeah.
we have questions coming. First we'll take from the chat box. Other than that, if we have a participants would like to directly interact, we will give you that privilege. Before that,
Correct.
sir, I'll just quickly read one query we have from the chat box.
Yeah.
Mr. Satish Kawar says, by integration of Indian literature in Indian knowledge system, do we mean the complete replacement of English literature and its narratives by Indian literature and Indian knowledge system in Indian justice delivery system, or the synthesis of both? So, what should be the right approach? This is the first
Come
question.
again. Come again.
Okay, a little slow. By integration of Indian literature in Indian knowledge system, do we
Hmm.
mean the complete replacement of English literature, which we have been, studying and reading, and the narratives of English literature?
Hmm.
Then, by Indian literature and Indian knowledge system in Indian justice delivery system, or the synthesis of both?
Okay,
I will,
I
I
understood the
will,
first part much better. Yeah. So I cannot comment on jurisprudence, and also I cannot comment much on the judicial system. But yes, now I wouldn't say that we need to replace one with other. When we replace something, then we are going into once again the colonial model. That colonial model replaced something with something. So we should not consider them as adversaries. Probably we should be able to explore the connections and links. It is possible to maybe look at mythical ecologies in the Western literature as much we can look into Indian literature and the mythical ecologies. while that being applied to Indian judicial system and studies, maybe what I would say is there are ideas like Niti Shastra and Niti and so on, which could be a part of the judicial studies, but not replacing. I'm not a believer that something could be replaced radically. That we should not be in a hurry to ban and replace things. That is also equally detrimental. I suppose at least I touched upon the question, if not answered
Okay, sir.
convincingly.
Do we have more participants who would like to come up and interact with sir? Anyone?
Namaskar.
Yes, yes, yes,
Namaskar, sir.
yes.
At first, I am very good evening, sir.
Good evening.
At first, I am expressing my pleasure, sir. So, as I am empowered, we are empowered and enlightened through your very repository and informative lecture, sir, and close lecture. Sir, I want to know more about the decolonizing approach of this mythical ecology.
Okay, yeah, good question. Good question. Yeah, we do decolonize in 2-3 ways. One of the ways of decolonizing that is identifying the when we read, for example, Indian fiction, particularly if you read Indian fiction, and if you identify the mythical ecologies, Indian mythical ecologies in that, we are going back to a time which is pre-colonial. So claiming a pre-colonial tradition or claiming a pre-colonial framework is one attempt to decolonize. That is one. Second, looking at the ecological symbolism that you find in Indian fiction, we don't have to appropriate these symbols to Western environmentalism. If we can interpret these symbols, for example, if there is Hanuman as a god, appropriating that to air, Vayuputra and air, that is again an attempt to decolonize our analytical skills by getting new lenses. There are new trajectories and there are new templates of analysis which can be based on understanding these symbols, metaphors, and even mythical figures. So even going back in time to a pre-colonial time itself is a process of decolonization. And then comes resistance. Look at some of the ecologies which resist. Let's look at some of the landscapes which have resisted colonization. There are some places which were not colonized. There were some forests in India which were not colonized. There were some agricultural sections which were not colonized. When we identify and comment and learn from that, that is also an attempt to decolonize.
Okay, sir.
Thank you, sir. We have a third question from the chat box. From Mr. Himal. He says, I often find difficulties in defining the term in IKS. Is it indigenous or Indian? Do we consider it as myth or history?
Yeah, I would also prefer the term indigenous to Indian, because if you look at a pan-Indian, I don't like a totalizing term. I would like to interpret the word Indian knowledge system, Indian in its plurality, Indian in its indigenous plurality. So what is indigenous probably in Tripura also goes into Indian knowledge system, and what is indigenous in Andaman, Andaman and Nicobar, should also go into Indian knowledge system. So I would rather like to interpret that as indigenous with plurality, with a plural suffix to that, rather than a totalizing Indian.
Thank you, sir. So can we take a few more questions with the permission?
Yeah.
We have a few more. Dr. Diksha says, how do we deal with the paradox, if there is any, of articulating the said mythological ecologies in English? To what extent and how does the breaking away work when talking about decolonizing our narratives?
Can you come again? Please come again.
Dr. Diksha, if you are here, could you please come in and directly you can raise your question.
Please. Yeah, please come. You could unmute and ask.
Yeah, Dr. Diksha, you're there? Okay, maybe we'll take another one then,
Yeah.
because the question is a little confusing when I did not
Yeah.
completely
Yeah.
understand. So the next question we have from Mr. Nilay. Can we analyze Abhinav? Now this is
Abhijnana Shakuntalam.
Abhijnana Sakulantalam through the lens of mythical ecology. Pardon me for my
Yes,
pronunciation.
absolutely. Brilliant. Absolutely. Because it gives you a fantastic analytical framework, because we have this Tapovan. Part of the play is set in Tapavan, and part of that is set in Dushyant's court. So you could look at human behavior changing when this mythical ecology shifts. And correspondingly, the rasa also changes. From Shringar, eventually it changes into Karuna. So all of that could be integrated with a study of this mythical ecology. There cannot be a better text than Avijnana Shakuntalam by Kalidas. Absolutely, I agree.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else from the participant who'd like to come in? Okay, so we have the last question,
Ma'am,
was probably this. Okay, yes, please.
yes, sorry to interrupt. Uh, Sir, I would like to ask that with such vast literature we already have, that is, from the perspective of ecological IKS. So
Hmm.
why don't we see its implementation in the policies or through other mediums in contemporary Indian, I think, society and at the national level or national building policies, actually?
Hmm. Yeah, that is one difficult question, because I don't know whether I am entitled to answer that. That has to be largely answered by the policymakers. Now, what we can do is, the assumption is, when the academic paradigms change, when epistemological paradigms change, probably the policy making paradigms will also change, because the people who are educated, who imbibe and internalize these methods, later when they come to power, maybe they could implement that. So this is how education lobbies, I believe. So when there are changes at the level of curriculum and pedagogy, maybe policies will also eventually change.
Thank you so much.
Are there more queries? We are perfectly on time.
Good evening,
Please.
sir. If I may ask a question.
Yes.
Sir, I'm Professor Chaitanya from Pune.
Yeah.
I had a query regarding the books that you have suggested. In case of Amitav Ghosh, you have
Yeah.
suggested two books.
Yeah.
Are there any other books that you would like to suggest for reading, for something that we can prescribe for students to read for this particular course?
Okay, other than this. Okay, yeah. See, there are many novels. See, I would particularly talk about Indian novels in translation.
Okay, sir.
Indian novels in translation. There are novels from Malayalam translated. Chemin. Chemin is about the mythical ecology of a sea, and there is a goddess of the name Kadalamma. Kadalamma is a sea goddess. The entire myth that you find in that novel is developed around that. There are more than Indian English fiction. Indian fiction in English will be very, very fertile. That is from regional literature to um, regional to English translations. And they speak immensely about this. That's my understanding. Of course, there are a few. There is a novel by Usha K.R., Monkey Man, Usha K.R., which talks about the mysteries of Bangalore, the city, related to pollution, and also some of the belief systems there. That is one. K.R. Usha's Monkey Man. That's another novel I would suggest.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir, and thank you for your insightful session.
Thank you.
So we have few more.
Oh, yeah.
We can extend maybe a little if you this may be the last two questions. So this will be the last two. We have one from Joshita Lamba. Sir, can Kanthapura be considered for analysis under mythical ecology?
Absolutely. Without doubt. Just a minute. Yeah, I'll take 2 minutes. I'm winding up. 2 minutes. Sorry.
Okay, so the last one we have from Paramita Das.
Kanthapura, yes, Kanthapura, because it creates a mythical geography of a small fictional town where Gandhiji is elevated to the level of a myth. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Miss Paramita, you'd like to comment?
Yeah, sir, I was very thrilled to hear to listen to your example of Tagore and Shantiniketan. Sir, I was just wondering that now that we are trying very hard to decolonize everything. So Tagore had this beautiful idea of having, instead of confined classrooms, of conducting classes under trees.
Roof.
And I'm a
Yeah.
history person. I'm a history professor. So I was just thinking, why can't we do away with that classroom structure? And when are we going to do away with that classroom structure and get back to that kind of an open air forum?
Absolutely. So, yes, learning can happen beyond the classroom. In fact, Indian traditional learning system, hermitage learning or ashram, was like that. There was no classroom. There were no texts. They were all based on memory, the oral tradition. There are still people who can chant thousands of lines because their memories work, or the mnemonic technique that they use are completely different. So all those things can happen. Yes, we need to redefine the idea of a classroom.